All right, we'll get to that in a second. Let's look at Witkoff from the Sunday.
Now by the man at the center.
From the Sunday interviews, the goat cough, the fucking great deal maker, the piece of shit that fucked over the Palestinians aggressively. I got to pee.
Of negotiations with Iran, Russia, and more. President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff. Mr. Witkoff, good morning, and thank you for joining us. Let me start right with the news we reported, which is that the President Trump plans to speak by phone tomorrow with Vladimir Putin. Do you expect this call will lead to direct negotiations between President Trump, President Putin, and President Zelensky, in-person negotiations?
Look, John, we had direct negotiations in Istanbul. There were some good achievements made, including the release of hostages. We have to get to a ceasefire. That's the president's position, and we all agree with that position. And most importantly, we have to get to a final peace deal. And the president has a force of personality that is unmatched. I think it's important. His sensibilities are that he's got to get on the phone with President Putin, and that is going to clear up some of the logjam and get us to the place that we need to get to. And I think it's going to be a very successful call.
What did you make of Putin's not going to Istanbul? I mean, President Trump even offered to adjust his trip to be there himself. Why was it, do you think, that Putin decided not to go?
Look, I don't want to comment on his motivations. I think in some respects it may have something to do with the delegation that he had sent to the original Istanbul talks, but those were different circumstances back then as compared to today. I want to leave it to, I want to be a bit more positive about this. I believe that the president is going to have a successful call with Vladimir Putin. They know each other. The president is determined to get something done here, and hopefully, if he can't do it, then nobody can. So I leave it to the two leaders to have that call.
Vice President Vance said recently that the Russians, quote, are asking for too much. Is that your assessment of where we are right now? Is Putin asking for too much?
My assessment is that this is a very complicated conflict that shouldn't have happened. I completely agree with President Trump in that regard. And, you know, you've got people who are at each other. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of hatred, and the carnage has to end. And so I think in a negotiation like this, people take positions. The art, the elegance of it, and the president is the master at this. I've said many times that I follow his tactics because they work. The art here is to narrow that wide berth between the parties, and I think to some extent we've done that. To some extent, each party is staking out their positions, and I think Monday will go a long way towards identifying where we are and how we complete this negotiation.
Okay, and then we have the other major set of negotiations with Iran. Can you give us a sense of what is the outline of the deal that President Trump wants to get with Iran?
Well, the president has been very clear. He wants to solve this conflict diplomatically and with dialogue. And he's given all the signals. He's directly sent letters to the supreme leader. I have been dispatched to deliver that message as well, and I've delivered it. But on the other hand, we have one very, very clear red line, and that is enrichment. We cannot allow even 1% of an enrichment capability. We've delivered a proposal to the Iranians that we think addresses some of this without disrespecting them. And so that's important. We want to get to a solution here, and we think that we will be able to. But everything begins from us.
I don't believe this at all, dude. I don't. I've been incredibly skeptical of the Trump administration offering back channel communication to Hamas from the start. These guys are working closely alongside Israel. Israel is their North Star here. Israel is the nation state that guides and is incredibly important in America's grand design for the region. And for that reason, I just don't think that there is any real deal making here with Iran. The reason why I don't think there's any real deal making here with Iran is because their goal ultimately is to have complete control over the region through these security partnerships. They can't have complete control over the region through trade deals because the only thing that they do, or I guess like America's version of a trade deal, is security partnerships, because that's the only thing that we manufacture. We manufacture weapons, and we give those weapons to our regional cooperators. But the goal here ultimately is to, just like everywhere else in the Western world, is to decouple from China. Okay? That's the major world war that we are gearing towards. Iran is on the opposite side of this endeavor. Iran and Russia being maybe a country that America thinks it can deal with and use as like a neutral territory, is on the opposing side, because they've been forced out of being in the periphery of the West, being a part of the global trade scheme that the United States of America has cooked up, right? And therefore, they are on the side of China. Okay? So any matter of like dealing with Iran has to be thought about with that ambition in mind. Everything can be, I mean, this is reductive, but everything can be seen from the lens of America versus China, the two poles, okay? This is the reason why I don't think that America is interested or genuinely invested in like peacemaking with Iran.
Standpoint, John, with a deal that does not include enrichment. We cannot have that, because enrichment enables weaponization, and we will not allow a bomb to get here. But short of that, there are all kinds of ways for us to achieve our goals in this negotiation. We think that we will be meeting sometime this week in Europe, and we hope that it will lead to some real positivity.
Like, I just don't trust America or Israel at all in any of these deal makings. Here's a great example. Breaking. The Israeli Security Cabinet has decided on Sunday to immediately resume the transfer of humanitarian aid to Gaza through existing channels until new humanitarian aid mechanism starts working, according to two senior Israeli officials said. Yeah. So on its face, you think, oh, how wonderful. Israel is allowing humanitarian aid to go back into the Strip. That's great. Except the reason why they're doing this, or what they're trying to do, for the record, what they're trying to do here is something incredibly nefarious. And I talked about it already. Drop Site News also reported on it. It's something that they've been gearing for already. Okay? It is called, I forget what it is, but it's based out of Switzerland, I think. It's a new group that they've created called like the Gaza Charity or something. Hold on. Let me give you the actual report on this. 1 second. Gaza Humanitarian Organization. Humanitarian Foundation Israel. So, here it is. Head of controversial new Gaza aid group says he won't be part of displacing Palestinians, urges UN to participate in the plan. So, this is the reason why I don't trust America. And this is the reason why I don't trust Israel. Okay? This is an Israel-backed aid group. It's not a real aid organization at all. Okay, it's not a real aid organization at all. There are already real aid organizations that work on the ground, and Hamas is not a threat to these aid organizations. Israel is a threat to these aid organizations. So understand that, okay? This is, in some ways, a more deranged version of the Gaza humanitarian aid pier that America built under the Biden administration, specifically so they could make it seem as though Israel was not inhibiting aid from going into the Strip when they very clearly were. This is an escalated version of that. This is far more evil than that. It's called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Okay? And the security guards for the American company that will distribute aid in Gaza landed at Ben Gurion Airport. They don't seem like fun people to fight with. Okay? An Israel journalist posted that American security guards landed in Israel. They will in charge of distributing aid in Gaza. They do not seem like fun people to fight with. Great. Can these same guards intercept the American 2,000-pound bombs before they hit tents and kill families who will be surviving on that aid? Serious question, says Mossab Abu Toha, the famous Palestinian award-winning poet Mossab. Okay. I said the problem with aid distribution in Gaza is that Israel is blocking it. The fact that American mercs alongside the Israeli occupying force will choose who to give aid to while restricting calories and using it as a surveillance dragnet is insane, pure Nazi shit. We are watching a live-streamed Holocaust. Okay? This is not aid distribution. This is trying to use in the most nefarious way possible, in direct contravention of international human rights law, in direct odds with how aid is supposed to be distributed by NGOs. Instead of doing that, they are violating all of those laws to weaponize aid against a captive population that is being bombed inside of an open air prison, a concentration camp. It's the most insidious version. It is the most insidious version of this process that I've seen thus far. It's almost as insidious and almost as gross as basically completely refusing to let in any aid. It actually partners with Israel's lack of interest in letting in any sort of humanitarian aid into the Strip. This is a way to make up for one of the major issues that I've talked about that Israel has. Israel is experiencing manpower issues. Okay? They do not have enough manpower and enough interest in permanently occupying the Gaza Strip. And the reason for, there's just, the reserves are pissed off. They don't have their ranks. They're having a hard time. So how do you make up for that? You make up with U.S. security contractors, mercenaries. It's a way to basically not have the U.S. military officially be on the ground in Gaza, but still have U.S. military officially operate in Gaza by way of mercenaries. Because given our war on terror, given our war economy, we have plenty of former special forces operators and military contractors that work as private military contractors now. This is what's happening. Those guys are going to be in charge of aid distribution in the Strip. There's a reason why the United Nations and every single humanitarian organization and human rights group has railed against this process. Okay? Israel's agreed to allow some food into Gaza before a newly approved mechanism for aid deliveries is up and running later this month. The head of the newly established Gaza Humanitarian Foundation told CNN. These are all military contractors. Do you understand? The aid distribution in the Strip is going to be conducted by military contractors. That's insane. They are weaponizing aid against a captive population that is starving and desperate for it. It is insane that they're doing this. It's like they don't have enough concentration camp guards, so now America is sending concentration camp guards into the area mercenary concentration camp guards into the area to distribute aid by, not by need, mind you, but by whatever their colonial ambitions are. And in the short term, the Israeli Security Cabinet has decided on Sunday to immediately resume the transfer of humanitarian aid to Gaza through existing channels. Is there any chance that U.S. mercs will be more humane than the Zio-Nazis? I'm so desperate for any reprieve from Gaza that I'm searching for something. I don't think so. I mean, maybe, because obviously the Israeli occupying force is so fucking brutal because of the insane amounts of like brainwashing and propaganda that has taken place in the mind of the average Israeli occupying force combatant, that perhaps these war criminals, many former veterans that have a litany of war crimes under their belt from their previous incursion in the war on terror in the region, they could even come across as more sympathetic to the Palestinians than the Israeli occupying force. But I'm not banking on that at all. Do you understand?
Circumstances on the ground right now, you've asked the Israeli government to allow aid in temporarily through existing mechanisms. Have they agreed to that, and how soon will that aid get in, if so?
That's right. We think that the situation on the ground is clearly urgent, and we can't afford to wait. We are committed to being operational with our plan by the end of the month, ideally in advance of that. But no time like the present to move aid in under existing mechanisms. The Israelis have agreed to that operational condition. We don't yet have final details as conversations are ongoing about what precisely that means and when, but we do expect to have some positive updates on that in the coming days.
Once you are up and running, how many distribution sites will you have in Gaza immediately? And how much of Gaza's population do you expect those distribution sites to be able?
Like, if the problem with aid distribution wasn't Israel, okay, if the problem with aid distribution was that, like, there is like a third party involved here that is genuinely presenting a danger to humanitarian rights organizations, then it makes sense why you would need additional security. Because a lot of these humanitarian aid organizations do hire security when they're operating in the region, right? Part of that security is a necessity because there are criminal elements, for example, that disrupt the aid delivery process, for example, especially when normal societal functions have completely broken down. There's no civil organization, like there's no civilian-focused organization like the police force to maintain an orderly process, or when there is a police force that tries to maintain some sense of order at the point of distribution, Israel kills that person immediately, like the next day. And there are criminal elements in the region right now backed by the Israeli occupying force, but Hamas, with the limited amount of with the limited capacities that it currently has, still can implement a curfew, for example, and even punish those who are operating alongside the Israeli security interests in the region, the criminal elements that get full reign to disrupt aid delivery, for example, or steal aid delivery. So there is some version of that, some version of order, but Israel is routinely assassinating those who actually try to maintain that semblance of order. But the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is because Israel is the reason why the aid delivery is disrupted. They're both shutting off aid delivery at the point of the border, okay? There are thousands of trucks waiting with tons and tons of humanitarian aid at the border that could go into Gaza, that could easily deliver aid into Gaza, and Israel is refusing to let that in. And also on top of that, the limited aid that has entered during like the ceasefire time, for example, Israel has actively worked to disrupt in the distribution side by letting criminal elements basically fucking do whatever they want to do in the region under the cover of drones, under the security of drone bombings, if anyone tries to actually go against them. So obviously, obviously the major issue here for humanitarian aid is not necessarily Hamas. It's never been Hamas, as a matter of fact. It's Israel. And we're playing this like song and dance, just like Biden did with the Gaza aid pier, but a evolved version of that same song and dance that is going to be even scarier now.
Yeah, well, we are going to immediately open up by the end of the month 4 secure distribution sites. We have plans to ramp up to 8 to 10. That will include locations in northern Gaza. The initial plan, as we have today, is going to provide 300 million meals over the first 90 days.
Top humanitarian aid officials have been very critical of this plan. They say that it will enable the forced displacement of Palestinians, that it will bring additional risks to the lives of Palestinians living in Gaza. Tom Fletcher, the United Nations Emergency Relief Coordinator, called this a, quote, cynical sideshow and a, quote, fig leaf for further violence and displacement. What's your response to those comments and criticisms?
A lot of what NGOs and the UN heard early was full of misinformation. There were a lot of rumors about the IDF providing the direct security here. There were rumors about, biometric.
Why does it have to be mercenaries that's distributing this aid? Why can't the mercenaries work alongside normal aid distribution that already exists? Why won't Israel allow journalists into the Gaza Strip? Why won't Israel allow humanitarian aid organizations into the Gaza Strip? Why won't Israel allow the hundreds of trucks that are piling up at the fucking border with tons of aid into the Gaza Strip? There is a reason why Israel is letting this happen. It's because this is a part of the colonial ambition, okay? That's it. That's it. Their goal here is not to actually distribute aid. Their goal is to weaponize aid. That is the reason why all of the United Nations and all of the NGOs that work in the region are saying this is completely unacceptable. The UN and other organizations say working with Gaza Humanitarian Foundation would compromise neutrality. The organization backed by Israel to take over food distribution in Gaza as famine looms has admitted it would not be able to feed some of the most vulnerable civilians from the militarized compounds it plans to set up. They're going to be distributing aid from militarized compounds. Aid groups in the United Nations have already refused to work with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a Swiss-registered organization led by a former U.S. Marine. This guy that we just saw, Jake Woods. Okay? They say it does not have the capacity to end hunger in Gaza and would make it harder to get aid to civilians caught up in other wars by undermining their neutrality. Israel has not officially laid out its plans for food distribution in Gaza, but statements from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and briefings from Israeli officials envisage 4 or 5 militarized distribution centers in southern Gaza, run by private security companies under the oversight of Israeli military bases. GHF is in advanced discussions with Israel on details and timing and hopes to have news soon, a person involved with planning at the foundation said. They're building military outposts. And because they don't have enough manpower to sustain those military outposts, they're literally building military outposts under the guise of humanitarian aid distribution, and it's backed by American mercenaries. Do you understand? Yeah. UN agencies reject Israeli plan to use aid as bait. And that's precisely what they're doing. When you're like, this is comical, this is like comic book villain shit. This is precisely what the goal is here. Okay? UN Children's Fund spokesperson James Elder insisted that Israeli proposal to create a handful of aid hubs exclusively in the south of the Strip would create an impossible choice between displacement and death. The plan contravenes basic humanitarian principles and appears designed to reinforce control over life-sustaining items as a pressure tactic, he told journalists in Geneva. It's dangerous to ask civilians to go into militarized zones and collect rations. Humanitarian aid should never be used as a bargaining chip. The Gaza Strip has been under a complete aid blockade for more than 2 months, and humanitarians have warned repeatedly that food, water, and medicines and fuel have been running out. The Israeli aid distribution blueprint presented to UN humanitarians envisages only 68 trucks per day entering Gaza, 1/10 of what has been delivered during the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which held from 19th of January to 18th of March. It is not nearly enough to meet the needs of 1.1 million children, 2.1 million people, Mr. Elder insisted. There's a simple alternative. Lift the blockade, let the humanitarian aid in, and save lives. But they don't want to do that because you have to remember, they want to exterminate and ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip, and they want to permanently occupy the Gaza Strip militarily. This is the goal. So, of course, when you realize that that is the goal, which is, by the way, not even a goal that they are sheltering the public from. This is their stated goal at this point. When you realize that that is their stated goal, all of these things that they do is at the behest of said stated goal. It is so sinister. It is so terrifying and so inhumane to weaponize aid distribution like this, to create military strongholds in the middle of Gaza backed by U.S. mercs because you don't have enough manpower in the Israeli occupying force to permanently occupy Gaza right now. It's mind-boggling that they're just doing this under the watchful gaze of the Western world, under Western leadership that refuses to contend with this reality. Oh, they are going to use a bag of flour to do a mass surveillance upon the entirety of the Gaza Strip. They are going to deny humanitarian aid to groups that they decide are dangerous. Okay? They have done this already. Isn't it bait for Hamas to kill U.S. Army personnel? I don't think it's bait for Hamas to kill U.S. Army personnel either. What is this? Yeah, no, I already talked about this. Yes, this is the first stage of this. So they approve immediate return of humanitarian aid in the Gaza without release of hostages, but only because, as Jake Woods said on CNN, they're doing this so that they can advance the U.S. military compounds that they're building in the region, in southern Gaza.
PII being shared back with the Israeli government. And I cannot blame the humanitarian community for crying foul amid that misinformation. I would not have participated in a plan that did those same things. However, that is not the plan. I want to stress this plan is not perfect, but this plan will be feeding people by the end of the month in a scenario where no one has allowed aid to be in over the course of the last 10 weeks.
So will this aid mechanism be able...
They're doing this thing where, like, Israel set up a condition that is like a complete blockade on aid. So obviously this is better than a complete blockade on aid, right? So that the dumbest person on the planet can say, well, technically this is helpful. This is better, right? If given the option of cutting off both of your arms and your head, they simply say, okay, we're going to cut off one of your arms. You prefer that, right? You prefer that over to cutting off both of your arms and then finally your head. But it's like, you shouldn't be cutting off any of the arms or the head at all. There's another solution out there that you are just blocking the public from even thinking about, which is not stopping aid from entering the Strip. There are plenty of organizations that are willing to work in the Strip. Israel refuses to allow them into the Strip. And when they do allow them into the Strip, they kill them too. That's the other part of this.
Able to function without those major UN agencies? Will you have the stocks of aid? Will you have the trucks, the infrastructure to be able to get enough aid and then distribute it inside of Gaza?
I think right now it's hard to say. Ultimately, the community is going to face a choice. This is going to be the mechanism by which aid can be distributed in Gaza. Are you willing to participate? The answer is going to be, pretty critical to whether or not this ramps up to sufficiently feed 2.2 million people in a very desperate situation.
The whole reason that this mechanism is being set up is because Israel won't let aid into Gaza in any other way. Israel accuses Hamas of stealing aid and then profiting off of the aid.
This is negligent. This is gross negligence that I suspect is just simply propaganda. The idea that like Hamas is actually a burden to aid distribution is a lie, okay? It is just an outward lie. Straight up. Straight up. There is only reporting to show the exact opposite, okay? The notion that like Hamas is actually fucking up the aid distribution in the Strip is ridiculous at a time when Israel's not letting any aid into the Gaza Strip. That's it. If anything, Hamas has not been a hurdle in aid distribution. Hamas has actually tried to create a sense of organization around the point of distribution at a time when Israel has done the flower massacre, and at a time when Israel has armed certain groups in the region, criminal elements in the region, to actually create chaos at the point of aid distribution or to even steal aid distribution. There is so much reporting on this. Heads of household would be expected to collect boxes weighing up to 20 kilograms with several days' supply of food and basic hygiene items like soap for their families. There is no provision for those too sick or weakened by famine to walk long distances across Gaza's ruined landscape with heavy loads. From what we've understood, the plan would increase the ongoing suffering of children and families in the Gaza Strip. Said United Nations Children's Fund spokesperson Jonathan Cricks. How is a mother of 4 children who has lost her husband going to carry 20 kilograms back to her makeshift tent, sometimes several kilometers away? The most vulnerable people, including the elderly people with disabilities, the sick and wounded, and orphans, will face huge challenges to access aid. Beyond logistical problems with Israel's plans, humanitarian organizations say that agreeing to work under Israel's military would compromise the neutrality that is the most crucial protection for their unarmed teams. It would also make it harder for them to operate in other conflict zones where neutrality is key to being able to reach civilians in contested areas. These plans are basically instrumentalizing humanitarian aid, putting it into the hands of the party to the conflict, which goes against the principles of impartiality and independence. We don't work with parties to any conflict, said Bushra Khalidi, policy lead for the Palestinian territory at Oxfam. Giving the concentration camp guards the distribution of humanitarian aid, the capacity to distribute humanitarian aid is so insane to me. I hope you guys can understand. This is a new meta of war crimes built on top of an endless sea of war crimes. But of course, it's not. Israel's no stranger to violating rules of war and rules of conflict with regular frequency, whether it be having their special forces team dress up like doctors and patients to go and assassinate someone in a hospital bed, as they have done so, or given the reporting on Israel potentially using even Red Cross ambulances to conduct a military operation alongside a bombing wall campaign that they engaged in when they were trying to extract some of the hostages. They killed 200 Palestinians. And I don't put it past America, because America has also played along with this, with the Gaza humanitarian aid pier sham that was a $250 million marketing tactic to make it seem as though Israel was rendering aid into the Gaza Strip. That pier barely brought in any aid whatsoever. This is also part of the process in the ways in which America has utilized doctors around the world, like in Pakistan. Part of the operation to find Osama bin Laden, which is so crazy that they were like trying to find Osama bin Laden, like they didn't know where the fuck he was. I still don't believe that. They had a mass inoculation campaign in Pakistan. That mass inoculation campaign in Pakistan was actually to collect DNA information from random citizens of Pakistan. It created insane anti-vaxxer sentiment. That was all. There's a reason why some of these things, there's a reason why all of these things are a part of the rules of global war, the rules of conflict. Okay? It's because you're not supposed to harm the civilian population in the process. You're not supposed to you're not supposed to weaponize aid distribution, because then people can't trust the aid distribution. You can't, you can never trust aid distribution ever again in that process. You're like, well, I don't know if this is poisoned. Israel is giving this to me, and Israel's dropping bombs on my head. So there is no reason to believe that this is also going to be There's no reason to believe that this is also going to be like real aid. It's going to most likely be fucking poison, is what people are going to think. Anyway, Dropsite is doing an investigation into the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Newly formed U.S.-backed private foundation forms the backbone of Israel's new plan to control all humanitarian aid entering into Gaza. 68 days in the total siege, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, is being marketed as a secure and efficient alternative to UN and NGO pipelines, which Israel has systematically attacked and sought to dismantle. Staffed by U.S. military veterans, former officials, and corporate financiers, GHF promises to deliver aid to 1.2 million Palestinians through privately secured distribution hubs, with plans to expand to more than 2 million. A closer look at the foundation's presentation documents obtained by Axios indicates it is likely to serve as a foreign-controlled proxy to militarize aid, sideline Palestinian institutions, and entrench a system of occupation under the guise of neutrality. I know Biden has cancer. I don't give a fuck. Shut the fuck up, chatters. I know. I saw the report, okay? Caitlin Collins reports Joe Biden has ass cancer. I know, okay? I told you this was going to most likely happen. I told you he was going to fucking lose the election and then die quietly. Okay? And there it is. All right? I know. It's not karma. Come on. If this is fucking nothing in comparison to the incalculable harm that Biden has contributed to the world, specifically the Palestinians, okay? GHF says it will establish 4 secure division sites inside Gaza, each designed to serve up to 300,000 people with food. A new foreign architecture for Gaza. Who's running it? The organization is led entirely by U.S. and international actors, with no Palestinians involved in the leadership or oversight of the project. Okay, Jake Wood is the executive director, Team Rubicon founder. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. You saw him. He's the one in the polo tee talking to CNN here, okay? Not that guy. That guy's the CNN anchor here.
It resells to the Palestinian people.
That's Jake Wood. This is Jake Wood. David Burke, Chief Operating Officer. John Ackery, Head of Missions, ex-US Aid. Board members include Nate Mook, former CEO of World Central Kitchen, Riza Scheinberg, ex-U.S. Treasury terrorist financing, now MasterCard VP, Jonathan Foster, Wall Street financier, Loke Henderson, corporate governance lawyer. Advisory board includes military and diplomatic officials, including LTG Mark Schwartz, former U.S. security coordinator for Israel/PA, Bill A. Miller, former UN and U.S. security official, David Beasley, former head of the World Food Program, pending confirmation. Formerly registered just months ago in Geneva, according to Le Temps, the group was incorporated with a Swiss lawyer, a U.S.-based legal consultant, and an Armenian financier on its board, none of whom have a background in humanitarian work. There is no Palestinians in GHF's governance or operational leadership. Oh my God, everyone is talking about Biden's ass cancer. Okay, fuck it. Let's talk about Biden's ass cancer. Yes. President Joe Biden has prostate cancer, his office announces. He's reviewing treatment options. Last week, President Joe Biden was seen for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, characterized by a Gleason score of 9, grade group 5, with a metastasis to the bone. While this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. The president and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians. Knowing that evil never dies, I don't think that this 95-year-old man is actually going to die from this ass cancer, okay? Or prostate cancer. It's not.